Every cycle we get asked the same question: is altcoin season finally here, or is it already over, canceled before it even begins? With Bitcoin pulling back, dominance shifting, and altcoin season index flashing signals, traders are split. Some say that this is the start of an explosive moves across the altcoin board. Others are saying liquidity is drying up and the run is off the table. So today we're going to tune out all the noise. We're going to dig into the charts, the data, and the signals that matter most to figure out whether alt season is coming or if it's just another false start. My name is Paul Sampson. Welcome back to DataDash. When it comes to trading and investing, the number one advantage that you can have is access. Access to reliable insights, professional grade analysis, and a community that pushes you to get better each and every single day. And that's exactly what we've built over at DataDash Pro. When you join, you get direct access to our Traders Club Discord, where I share daily updates, chart setups, and insights into both short-term moves and longer-term market structure. Whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or the broader altcoin market, you'll know the exact levels and setups I'm watching personally. And just as important, you'll be a part of a tight-knit community of traders who are learning, growing, and navigating this market together. On top of that, you can subscribe to the Dash report written by Nicholas Merton, which is a monthly deep dive into the global macro picture, everything from equities and commodities to interest rates and crypto. Nick breaks it all down, the bigger trends driving financial markets as well, and it's one of the most valuable resources you can have if you want to understand the why behind the moves we're seeing. And if you really want the full DataDash experience, you can bundle the two, the Traders Club and the Dash report, and get the complete package. That way you're covered from daily trading setups all the way to monthly macro strategy. So if you're serious about trading, investing, and staying ahead in this fast-moving market, I'd encourage you to check out datadashpro.com. Whether you join the Discord, subscribe to the Dash report, or bundle the two of them together, you'll be taking a big step toward trading with more clarity and confidence. That's datadashpro.com, where traders and investors level up. The link is down in our description below. I look forward to seeing you all inside. So folks, I'm jumping right into the meat and potatoes today. So I'm going to take a look at the ETH versus BTC chart. This is the very first thing I looked at when I came onto the channel here at DataDash in the beginning of this year with Nicholas Merton, and we were trading around this region here, I do believe, as we started off the beginning of the year. Now what you see here is known as a very bullish harmonic setup, and a harmonic pattern is a sequence of Fibonacci's based on a very set list of ratios with a set list of rules and targets that come along with each set. And I'd been tracking this potential move ever since 2023, right as we entered into one of the last notable altcoin rallies. Altcoin season, to me, I think that term is just something that's so pigeonholed into what we saw in 2017 and really I guess in 2021 as well. But even then it was lackluster compared to 2017, and of course now in 2025 the altcoin rallies have been abysmal compared. However, I must say it just depends on what you're looking at. It's just very similar to the stock market. There's so many stocks out in the world, and the top 7 of course are, basically holding up and propping up the entire market, but across the board in the stock market not everything is performing well, while you have things that are making new all-time highs at the same time. And in the crypto market industry, we have the same exact setup now that there are millions of options. But taking it back to this setup here, I'm on the weekly time frame, by the way, and again, this is a very bullish setup. So much like a falling wedge, right, where you have the price action consolidating to the downside, and while you're creating that setup, it's very bearish and it's very brutal on the way down, and that ends up being a bullish reversal, right? So we have the same scenario here when you see these harmonic setups completing at the bottom, and then in vice versa, if you see them completing at the high, that is a bearish setup here, right? So we would see a reversal to the downside. So in this case, very bullish setup, been tracking for a very long time. I even was able to time out a completion zone where we'd come into this region here between December of 2024 and March of 2025, and this was again years in advance, and we ended up bottoming April, basically just a few weeks later than expected, right? Than that March bottom. By no means was it an easy journey. Obviously, this was a pretty brutal drive down. This is what gave me the edge in the market at the time to not be overly bearish on Ethereum specifically. And then in turn, especially on some of the altcoins, right? Because in theory, if Ethereum was going to get a push, we'd probably see the altcoin market do pretty well at the same time. But Ethereum has been my number one, driver that I'd be looking for, because in this scenario, this is where we see ETH outperform Bitcoin. And you only see two locations on this chart, right, as far as targets go. So for this bullish setup here, which again, this is measuring Ethereum against Bitcoin. So in theory, if we're going to be pushing up, we're outperforming Bitcoin in the short term, near term, however long this time frame is going to be looking for. But we have two major targets, and it's a simple Fibonacci retracement of the overall high to low of the 382 and then the gold pocket. And then the third target is usually the B point, which generally aligns with one of the two most times, but sits about 0.048 just for, good measure here. Now I kind of boxed this region off as a major, region of kind of you paying attention to. We had a untapped yearly pivot there. So that's a high time frame average of price, much like a 50-day moving average, a 200-day moving average, except for this average does not move, right? So this is the average of price for a full year, likely to be, remet. And we came up, and you can see that's exactly where we came. And we got to this region in a hurry, right? I will say, even for me, I didn't expect to see this area met so quickly. It did take us several months here, so from April to August. So 4 months here, I guess you could say. And we front ran the first major target here at the 382, and we see this a lot, honestly. So actually, for me, I do anticipate us to, one, let's just state that we've come close enough, right? So from this region to this was a really large move. I don't know if that's the high at the moment, but likely to me to come back up and actually make a new high up into this region, potentially up to that B point soon. But from this overall area, and including the region we're at, we have to note that this is a region where we'd see a cool down before we make that next jaunt to the next targets above us, okay? So what that means is even if we were to see a move like this, you pull back to a local, gold pocket or a 382, let's just look at, that's a pretty sizable pullback still, all the way back down to 0.032 for ETH BTC, or even the gold pocket, all the way back down to 0.027. For a pullback currently, I'd really be eyes up on this one because, as I always state, when you have these really aggressive moves to the upside, a lot of times you don't get the deep retracement. More times than not, you come back for a more shallow retracement, and then you get the continuation to the upside. So here locally, I do think that we're at risk of that here. So we just something we all have to be aware of as far as risk management goes. And I bring that up because in the idea of looking at Ethereum, let's just pretend that we get a huge rally tomorrow to $5,000, right? It's about 10, 20, 25% from where we are now. Is the risk of buying a $4,000 ETH at this point, which is pretty much all-time high, going up another 20-25% before hitting the next major resistance, worth it to you? Or would you rather, or can you handle the risk of it coming back down 30% as soon as you enter, right? That's the thing I always want to point out. Like, for anybody that's already invested, hey, just be aware that we're in limbo right now. We could pull back 20-30%, we could push 20-30%. We're kind of in that realm right now. Overall, I do anticipate higher, but we are at a key inflection point here on the ETH BTC pair. It's not a place where personally I'd be looking to get involved on Ethereum, really on anything crazy, unless we're at like some really key levels, because this chart that I am pointing out is a very high time frame. This is a weekly area. So even if we are to make our way down and have some bursts back up on the way, this could be the next few weeks. This could be a few months. In that time, the other altcoins could pop 100, 200, 300% if we really see a rally start to go underway. But the main point I want to point out here is that the rally has already begun, right? It's not just coming. It's not just starting. ETH was $1,400 in April, and it is $4,200, $4,700 just a few weeks back. The altcoin rally has been here. November of last year, we saw XRP explode 600% in 1 month. We saw HBAR explode 700% in 1 month. We've seen Solana go over 100% in the last few months, sorry. The unfortunate thing about everybody stating and waiting for altcoin season to just begin once you get, I don't know, a 50% pump or a 50% rally somewhere is the one thing that really wrecks everybody, I think, in the overall scheme. You have to be willing to put on risk at some of these key regions when we get there, when the fear is at absolutes, which is exactly where we were back in April, of course, with the tariff woes. So now we're running into major resistance. And again, we could push back up into it short term here for the few weeks. And the overall idea here that I've had since even coming into this was that we would see a sizable altcoin run, including Ethereum, basically over the next 2 years. Now that does include pullbacks, right? So it's not just stating, again, don't just come in and YOLO into this, but this has been my overall thesis for the last few years that I've shared within the Traders Club Discord, and just really been preparing myself for, right? So this is again, 6-year bullish reversal, all right, that more than likely is going to take some time to fully unravel. Again, this is one of the major targets up here. Now, this isn't the final. Really, the final target comes all the way back up to the C point, but that's getting a bit aggressive. The more, realistic and the more conservative target areas are going to be, like, again, that 382, that gold pocket, that B point. But if we come through and we bust through and push through here, the final target of this setup is back to the C point, which is all the way up here, which would be a sizable move. Again, 7-year setup, not going to happen and unfold overnight. Even though we did get a really nice push up here in 4 months, those quick rallies obviously usually come up and we get a nice little consolidation period just to chop everybody out that came in late. which we do this time and time again. No matter what happens, no matter how this market reacts, when Bitcoin's at $3,000, people are fearful. When Bitcoin's at $60,000, people are excited. When Bitcoin was at $15,000, people are fearful. When Bitcoin's at $100,000, people are excited, right? So it's the same emotions time and time again. Majority is always going to come in at the worst time, right when we're about to consolidate after large moves. They get chopped out. They immediately go under 30-40%. They get worried. There's going to be negative news around it at the time. They exit their positions only to see a few months later everything pump again. Then they re-enter again, of course at a wrong time, right before a pullback most likely, and it happens over and over and over. So currently, this is how I view everything, right? So I'm looking at the altcoin market as a whole, of course, related to Bitcoin. I think that we're in a position where we're coming into major resistance on both Bitcoin and ETH BTC. Now, is there more room to go up? I think there is, but at this point, it's a very, what's the risk, right? You know, when we're sitting down here, you have really high upside before a major area. Now we're at major area, so now we have really high upside for that pullback, whether it's down to that 382 we pointed out, down to that gold pocket, right? And you're talking about, we're already down 13%, and you could see another 12, 13 back down to that, and then maybe even 20% down to the overall gold pocket. These are things that, to me, you just want to be aware of here, because it's not a grand time to enter, if I'm being honest, in the sense of long term, right? Like where we are currently, again, my bias, to be very clear, is that I think we have a little more upside to go. All right, I'm willing to change that if Bitcoin starts to close below 107,000. But until that happens, I think that we push up. Okay, I think that ETH pushes up again to about 5,000 or more until that changes. I hold that bias. That's currently my outlook at the moment. I'm not calling for that. I don't know that that's going to happen, but that's just what I see at the moment. We just have to be patient to let everything unfold here. And the ETH BTC pair, I think that we come back up and we tag this target. Whether it's the B point or that 382, and then we get the cool down, right, overall. So it's going to be probably several months here again, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 months even. People maybe look at that as a bear market. Maybe it does, right? Maybe that's what it becomes. But overall, this bigger picture is still being, what I've scooped up the majority of my ETH, under 2,000, at 1,000, at 1,100, back in 2017. I mean, like these are the times that I'm waiting for here. I anticipated this move to take about 18 to 36 months from the completion zone. All right. So, and that's of course to get to this target area. So overall, I anticipate the ETH BTC pair to more than likely, if we haven't already hit the high for the moment, push up into this region. Again, you have to manage your risk accordingly, realizing that we are in a zone where this is potential top down, right? I'm not saying bull market over, but just a few months of consolidation like we've seen time and time again. Just be prepared for that. But overall, the next leg up takes us into this region, probably takes ETH into sizable areas up in this region. The altcoins continue up, and that completion zone for this is really like between December of 2026 and November of 2028. So I know that's a wide window, and that also aligns with my overall housing market cycle, right? Theory, where I'm looking at crypto putting in the first 20-year market cycle alongside the housing market, which I'm anticipating to top around 2026 to 2029, with a big focus right in the middle at about 2027. So that aligns with this time frame as well. And this is based on fib times is what's giving me this right here. So basically December 26 is obviously, January 2027. Between that and the year and a half later after that, it's just a time where for me personally, I'll be looking to more than likely just be very cautious. I'm looking probably not to go into new big long-term investments here. Maybe that changes down the road, but for now I'm looking at this as a very, very big pivot in the markets where I'm anticipating sizable corrections across the board, potentially like Great Depression style moves when we get into this region, right? December 2026 and November 2028. And until then, I think that the overall altcoin market continues to grow at a steady pace. All right. I know that's not what everybody wants to hear. Everybody in the crypto world wants to get rich quick. Those days, I truly believe, are gone. So to put it in short, because again, I'm not trying to confuse anybody here. We've already seen a sizable rally to the upside here. Okay, again, $1,400 ETH in April, $4,900 ETH in August, 4-month window. Very likely to cool off, whether it's now or another, push back up to like maybe 5,100, 6,000, whatever that may be, and then we see a cool down like we have had, like last summer, right into March of 2024, basically the summer of 2024, summer of 2025. I'm sorry. 2024, beginning of this year here, right? We've had several months at a time where we've had just a consolidation after a large rally, and that's just very natural. The overall big picture, again, weekly time frame, this is not small ball stuff. I see these altcoins getting some movement. Again, you got to be picky, you got to be selective, and if you're going to risk into some ones that may have more upside potential, those are not where you put the size in, at least to me, right? Everybody looks at that in the sense of like, oh, if I think this is going to 10x, I'm going to put the majority of my portfolio there. That's not the best play, right? Because if those 10x potentials can also go to zero, right? At this point, ETH and BTC probably aren't 10x potentials from where they are right this moment, but they are most likely not going to go to zero. And that's the play to me where I put size into, and then I'll take 10%, 5%, whatever of my portfolio, and I'll risk that on something that may see a 10x. And then at that point, I take that portion, and then I look for a big red day on ETH and BTC, and I allocate more to that, right? That's the strategy at hand for me for the long play. And then overall, I anticipate the ETH BTC pair, which obviously in my eyes, if ETH is doing this, that's what the altcoins are doing. If ETH is doing this, that's what the altcoins are doing. ETH setup is from where we are now, we push up into this region around the end of next year, around, between that and even into 2028. I think that goes against, the old 4-year cycle idea where everybody will probably not be interested in altcoins for a year. Say we kind of see a little top next month and we see a 20-30% pullback, everybody will probably be like, oh, I'll wait till a year from now when everything's down 90%, and then if everything starts to turn around, people will be left behind, basically, is what I'm, I guess, envisioning. Yeah, this is the setup at play. Again, been preparing for years, executed at the low personally, ready for the reaction up in this region, and then looking to see how we go up into this area with time frames ahead here. And the idea here is to be scaling out of this market, not necessarily going crazy on big entries at this point. But I know that not everybody was in the market back here, and they want to allocate and try to get a piece of it. I just suggest that you just have to be aggressive at these times, because you're trading at multiples, at least on the Bitcoin and Ethereum charts. So if you're still asking yourself whether alt season is truly loading or it ends up being canceled this cycle, the lesson to me is the same. I would just say focus on real projects that solve real problems and manage your risk, biggest piece. Don't let the noise shake you out of your plan. And that's a big piece there too, right? So I'm not saying don't let it shake you out, as in like don't exit upon things that are dropping incredibly and you can't handle that anymore. I'm saying don't let it derive you from your strategy. There's been so many times when I've had to step into this market. Example, $1,400 ETH, $74,000 Bitcoin, just recently, when the odds were stacked against it, right? When everybody's very bearish, the news was as negative as can be. And that was the bottoms, right? And that was, several times have we come into these occasions, and the highs as well, right? So find a way to tune it all out. And if you want to keep learning alongside us and get daily updates, you can always join the community over at datadashpro.com. My name is Paul Sampson. This is DataDash. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, everybody, cheers.